Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Welcome to another rendition of Hombu Dojo podcasts. Today we have a special guest all the way from Lancaster, England, Andrea Carbon Sensei.
Hello.
Oos. Oos, oos, oos. We've just done day, what is it?
4.
They're all stringing together. Day 4 of Kangeiko.
Yep. The fatigue is setting in.
Body's starting to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is this your first Kangeiko, Andrea?
My first Kangeiko in Dublin, yes.
Dublin. And how are you finding it so far?
I'm running on empty now. It's fair to say.
Because not only are we doing, cold training in the mornings at 7 o'clock, going out for runs, coming back and training with a different sensei every morning, but we're also training in instructors training straight after that, and then training again in the normal scheduled evening adult classes. So for poor Andrea, she's training probably triple the amount of most of the people that are doing Kangeiko.
Yeah.
So we do feel for her in a big way. But how have you found it so far? Like in terms of the classes that we've been doing in Kangeiko.
Just awesome, because I normally train on my own, so I don't have really peers that I can train with in my own dojo, or anyone really that can challenge me. They're all lesser grades than me, all my students. So, and just being an instructor as well, you don't tend to be challenged as much from somebody else. So you can kind of get lazy on your own, and I just miss being in the line and just training and being, it's going to sound awful, but just being really selfish and not having to worry about students. So it's just been great to just focus on me and train this week.
Listen, we forget about that sometimes, how spoiled we are to have to be teaching in a professional dojo with a senior grade above us as instructors. We get told how shit we are all the time.
We get to be students and instructors at the same time. We're pretty lucky that way.
Yeah, and I miss that. I really do miss that.
Yeah, I remember teaching by myself in Scotland and having to travel very far to get any sort of input in what I was doing. It was very difficult to get feedback. And when you're training by yourself, you tend to just not train quite as hard as much as you'd like to think you would. It's good to have peers there. It's good to have people who are moving a bit faster than you, who are, they might have an extra cup of coffee in the morning, so they're feeling extra zesty, and you're sort of slugging away and you're trying to big yourself up. It's good to have that sort of, like we said a couple of podcasts ago, a bit of competitiveness.
Yeah, a bit of competition.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah, because I think you bounce off each other, definitely. What I found this week, anyway.
So no better time than Kangeiko to get that kind of spirit in you as well, because that's what it's all about, setting you up for the whole year.
That's it.
So
feeling like you've accomplished something at the start, so you can accomplish everything for the rest of the But we had an excellent class this morning from our very own Rue Sensei.
Us.
Oh, so sleep those. And Rue, can we just talk about a little bit what you were doing today? Because I thought it was very interesting how you combined your two passions in the class. I thought that was excellent.
Thanks, man. So my other thing that I do apart from karate is music. Before working as a full-time karate instructor, I was more or less a full-time musician, a little bit less than full-time, but something Scott mentioned during instructors training yesterday morning was that so he used a saying about music to describe what he was teaching, and he said it's not about the notes themselves, but what's also important is the space in between the notes. And I thought, I know exactly what he's talking about there. I can relate that to my karate because that's my bag. I do music. And I thought, in that moment I was inspired. I still didn't know what I was going to do for my Kangeiko class when I was teaching, and I was inspired, and I thought that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use a thing or two about music, relate it back to karate, and see how it goes. And that's what I did.
And I think it went very well.
Thanks
I think
very
it went
much.
down very well.
I focused on rhythm. So we started with just, Chokuzuki, and then we went into the classic Kizamizuki, Gyakuzuki combination, and I had people think about the rhythm, the way they punch, the way they expand, and the way they recover. These things, they happen together, but in a way there are points that happen one at a time. And when you string them all together and when you're repeating them to the count, you can find that there's a rhythm developing, and sort of leaning into that rhythm and really feeling it, I think, can help your training a lot, can get you in the spirit a bit more.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely. absolutely.
That was my class.
So when you said, Andrea, that you train yourself a lot, you're stuck training yourself. So when you train yourself, like for people who are probably in the same boat, there's probably a lot of people who maybe don't have dojos nearby. Maybe they don't. Maybe it's not the same style. And people who want to do karate maybe don't have karate dojos in particular. Training by yourself, what do you think is important in terms of continuing to develop without the sort of fortune we have of having constant input into our training all the time? What do you focus on yourself when you're training?
I think it's important to have a plan, just like you would have doing a gym program or anything like that. I think it's important to have a notebook and a plan, and I always have a plan. My plan is a sort of a rotating plan of I'd say about 13 weeks. So I work back at home on school terms, so it's they're about 13 weeks long. And so for my classes, for all levels of classes, I have a different plan that lasts for about 13 weeks, and then it rotates round again. And I have the same plan for myself. So for my own training, so say for example, I look at so like say I'm training over 3 days. I'd look at one day. And I'd be working on like 3 or 4 kata, random ones, and then I would be working on either kion or kumite and doing kion, or just working on a kumite drills. And that's kind of how I prepared for my last grading as well. Was just doing that for because it was very difficult. Obviously, like preparing myself for a grading as well. But I would say having that plan is really essential to keep you on track. Also, as well, I like I obviously use equipment, and I use the tubes by myself and weights, and I train a lot in the park because I don't have a dojo. So I train in all weathers in the park, which is kind of cool. It's relatively quiet.
Tough. I wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Days like today, I'd be no.
Yeah. It's not fun, but it does build spirit and keeps me disciplined. Also the use of although I don't tend to do it that much because I'm overly hard on myself anyway. But I find it quite useful to film yourself sometimes and then look back, and then there's nothing like sort of like sensei video, sensei film to sort of like reflect back on you when you don't have anybody else to spot you.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, that's good. We use we sometimes use a coach's eye. It's an app, and you can can use a slow motion and stuff and really see how terrible you are, even if you don't realize it. So training yourself is such a challenge. I mean, you had a period when you were down in Cork yourself, and sort of ran out of places to train. Like, how did you get on training yourself down there?
Well, I didn't train down in the park. Instead, I trained in a dingy alley behind my apartment building. Yeah, it was the first...
Against whatever homeless guy walked up, sure.
I practiced my combat skills daily. No, but seriously, graffiti and needles lying around the place. So I never got to train barefoot in that scenario. But
oh, gosh.
Did you train barefoot in the park?
No.
But I just repeat stuff that I'd repeat stuff that I remembered from my brief stint in morning training with the crew up here.
Yeah.
Just after I got my black belt, I joined morning training for a time. Then I had to move away. Then when I arrived in Cork, I just drew on that, and I keeping myself fit, repeating those combinations, those drills, those things we used to do, and sort of going through kata and trying to remember teaching points and trying to drill them into myself, but really probably missing out on so much other stuff that I could have been improving on because I didn't. Well, I did. I used a camera sometimes, probably not enough. But probably because during that time I just wanted to train to feel like I was training.
Yeah.
Not really to improve, I guess.
No.
Yeah.
I was doing it out of frustration. It was frustrated training.
Without the mindfulness,
Without the mindfulness, just wanting to sweat, wanting to get my heart rate up.
Yeah.
There's definitely a time and place for that kind of training, So like doing something is better than doing nothing, regardless of whether you can, watch your progress or mark what needs to be improved and stuff. Sometimes just, doing a kata or doing a few reps of kihon or shadow boxing or whatever it is you're doing is better than doing nothing. Yeah.
Well, I did leave the alley eventually. I got membership to the squash club, and I trained inside the squash courts. But you had to pay €2 for a token to turn the lights on,
Oh, that's
and the
way we
lights
used to-
only went on for 30 minutes.
Oh,
So I used to train in the dark,
used to do that.
which probably also wasn't very good for my progress. I was a full-time musician, all right? I couldn't afford those tokens.
Yeah.
What about? So, as a female instructor, there isn't many of them kicking about in the karate world. It's still, I think, in terms of instructors, a very male-dominated aspect of karate. I think now we've got more women doing karate than ever before, more girls taking part in classes than ever before. But why do you think that there's very few female instructors? And as a female instructor, do you find yourself having any challenges that come with that? Any benefits? Do you think that there's some sort of roadblocks in the way as a female instructor, in terms of, I don't know, like teaching, in terms of people's attitudes towards you? Do you find there's any controversy that comes with that?
I've been really lucky, really, in terms of my karate development. In that, well, this is probably true for a lot of women actually that have been training as long as I have. I've been training for about 30 years, and when I first started my dojo at home in Lancaster, my parent dojo, was very male dominated. I think there was only about, at the time, there was only about three or four women that were training, and the rest were all men. And it was in those days, like we're talking sort of like the late 80s, you know, there was a lot more people training back then. I first impressions of, you know, was I just remember the whole dojo being packed from wall to wall, about 4 lines, and they would all be men. And then around would, you know, dotted was the odd woman, and there was one senior female. I say senior, but she was only a brown belt at the time, and I thought she was awesome. So she was sort of like she was like the person that I looked to at the time. I think there's a number of I think in terms of that, I was treated like just one of the guys, and I was never. My own sensei, Sensei Norman Barrett, always expected me to do everything that the men did. So I didn't get a free ticket at all on anything. So everything that the men did, I had to do. And sometimes that was very hard, you know, because I didn't have the size and the weight behind me to be able to take a lot of things. So, but I just had to sort of get on with it. And if anything, it sort of just really made me tough and very resilient. I think that in terms of development through the grades up through the Dan grades and everything, and why there's not more women as leaders or maybe dojo heads, I think there's a mix of different reasons for it. I mean, I'm single, I have no responsibilities, I don't have children, and I think that has some things to do with it with women, is that they have to take sort of breaks from training more than what men do. You often see, I've got a lot of friends who have met people since they've been training, and then got married and had children and everything, and then they have to take breaks from training because of that. And so it's like any other job when you think about that. You know, there's more breaks in your training than what the average man has. I think that different women really, from what I've experienced, have experienced, like, I don't think really I've been very privileged to not experience much in the way of any sort of prejudice or bias. The only one time that I've ever experienced it in my life actually was just recently, I'd say about 3 years ago, on the grading. And it was one of my kumite partners that I had to fight. And I fought 3 guys at the time. The two of them pushed me really, really hard, you know, and like I got knocked down a few times and, you know, got up and all the rest of it. But one of the guys took it really easy on me, and I knew that he was kind of holding back on me, which was a shame. But I mean, I didn't know whether it was for his own reasons or whatever. But then he came up to me after the grading and the finish and apologized to me for not going in on me as hard as what he could have done. And it was that bit that I didn't like. I felt patronized with it. If he'd have not said anything, then it might have been okay. But it was just the fact that he felt the need to apologize to me for being too hard on me when, you know.
Do you find that happens a lot on you know, courses, on camps, you know, and if you're in, you know, like in this dojo here, do you find does it piss you off when you feel like, you know, your male training partners are taking it easy on you, maybe not giving you the respect of being able to handle yourself and do yourself regardless of how tough the training gets, how physical the training gets, you know, trusting that you as a senior grade and as an instructor and as someone who's been doing karate for a very long time is capable. And like you say, coming up through a dojo which was very male dominant and being treated and not being treated any different, do you find it annoying? Do you
I find it patronizing. I think that you know, I mean, there's lots of guys who mentioning no names who is sort of like the same sort of height as me, but nobody would think of
I'm even smaller than you, Andrea Sensei.
Yeah, we discovered that I'm a little bit taller. That made my day, actually, when I discovered I'm just a little bit taller than Rue. But nobody would dream of, I don't think of going up to Rue and saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry for going too hard on you," or whatever, you know. And I find
it's a must. If you ever come to the dojo, smack Rue,
yeah.
Yep.
So I find it, but it's only happened, I want to stress this, it's only happened once or twice in the whole time that I've been training, and it's not often. You get the odd, maybe very old-fashioned mindset that will say, you know, well, you know, I don't feel comfortable hitting women and that kind of thing. And, you know, I think some of that also has to do with the dojo that you come through as well, because I've even heard women say, "Oh, we come from," and whatever this means, "we come from a no contact dojo," and it's just, you know, and it's just like, what do you mean by that? You know, it's, you know, people like punching and kicking sort of like quite a ways from you, and sort of like the kick lands maybe about 3 inches away from your face, and it's just like, well, you know, why aren't you going to hit? "Oh, we come from a no contact dojo," and
I've never heard that before.
Yeah,
strange.
Wow,
it's very, very strange.
Part of the whole deal is learning to control your body.
And
it
also
is.
Get your hands a bit.
In terms of delivering power and holding back on power. It's strange.
Yeah.
I mean, I think, like, I don't know how you feel, but I feel like in the HCKI we have a lot of very high level female instructors and female karateka. Yourself, we've got Chrissy Howard, we've got Kay Doody, Laura Urin, Amanda Gisby, like Sandra Carr, a whole bunch of them. I could spend a while here listing names. And we've got a bunch in the dojo. We've got a lot of females in the dojo that have, you know, I remember them starting when I first moved here, and they've slowly been moving up to ranks. So now they're you know, they're all turning second queue, first queue. You know, they're ready to move on to that. They're just about ready to move on to that Shodan level. And I like to think that they don't experience that in this dojo. I like to think that they don't. But at the same time, I don't know how you feel about Ray, but sometimes as someone like me, I am a heavy, very heavy guy, and it doesn't take a lot for me to hurt someone if I want to hit them. Like it's very like effortless to be able to put my weight onto something and hurt. Like I do it to like some of the guys. You know, you catch them, you know, in the moment, and they're you know, folding over and trying to get their breath back and stuff. And I think sometimes you maybe not deliberately, but I would have to admit, as much as I, you know, might feel a bit ashamed of it, there is sometimes when you're paired up with a female in the dojo and you feel like you have to be extra careful, you know. You still don't want, you're still thinking you can't be patronising, you can't not put the effort in. But I like to think, like me and Andrea, me and you had a nice sparring session the other day where we're still making contact, we're still constantly hitting each other, moving back and forward. But do you ever feel like you have to take like just an extra second just to make sure you're not hurting anyone?
The short answer is yeah, and yeah, it happens when I'm paired up with women. But I think it's because generally, so I think I hold back my punches. The extent to which I hold back is about the size of my opponent. I think usually.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if it's one of the teenagers or one of the juniors, I won't be trying to hit hard at all.
Yeah.
If it's one of the big guys, I'll be trying to hit hard. But if it's one of the big guys and they also happen to be a white belt, I wouldn't hit hard. So grade comes into it too,
Yeah.
the level of experience. And then when it's that strong contingent of brown belt women that we have in the dojo, I sort of thump a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'd never try and hit any of them as hard as I'd try and hit you. When I'm trying to hit you, I'm going like full whack, like as hard as I possibly can, because I know it won't affect you.
Because he doesn't like me, that's why.
So yeah, is there a little bit of sexism in it? Probably, because let's face it, we're all a bit sexist. The same way we're all a little bit racist. Being aware of it is a good thing. So I guess I just have to hit the women a bit harder from now on.
do you think it helps, Andrea, if women who are training in dojos make it clear? Listen, I don't want special treatment. Just give me a smack.
I think maybe I think I think it's unfair as well to just lay this on the guys as well, because there's like occasionally when I've been fighting other women and I've had complaints from other women that that I've either clipped them or hit them too hard or whatever, and I've not been used to that. Maybe I've not been used to that because I've come through a dojo culture that's been very male dominated. I don't know, so they don't complain a whole lot, because maybe I don't. For them, it's not. If I hit them, it's not as hard as what maybe another guy would do, but it does sometimes make me aware, really. Like some people have said, oh, you don't really know your own strength, or you don't know your own power. So then it makes me aware, and I have to pull it back, because I do feel very confident teaching children. I've never ever, I've never. My control is immaculate when teaching children. So, it does beg the question, like, why, when you're fighting another adult woman or a man, do you modify your technique for that person, or do you, as Rue said, do you modify according to their size or their experience or their grade?
I think the other thing that can come into it is the type of class you're having. So one time, Scott Sensei was teaching a really nice kumite class, and we were changing partners again and again and again. We were going around, and it was just I think it was just trading gyakuzukis with your partner. But no, it was Paul Urin's class when he was here. Remember, one person would say uke and the other would say the other Japanese word, and then we thump one another. I can't remember the point of it, okay? I just remember thumping one
Paul,
another.
if you're listening, please comment what the other word was.
So one person was doing... Anyway, the point of the exercise was we were hitting each other. And people were getting really into it. The Palmerstown guys were here, which always raises the spirits a little bit, because they like to get stuck in,
Shout out to Ray and Jason in the Palmerstown
All right, Ray and Jason.
boys.
Scout. And I ended up walloping Natalia a lot harder than I would have under any other circumstances. And she later on told me it was the hardest punch she'd gotten all night. Not because I was punching especially hard, just because... No, I mean, not because I can punch especially hard, but because I was feeling the spirit.
Yeah.
And she survived. She was fine, because obviously she was in the spirit too. She probably had adrenaline going. If you walk up to a woman, whether she's a brown belt or a black belt or whatever, and punch her without letting her know, then it's going to be bad.
Yeah.
But if everybody's enjoying it and feeling it, then you can start thumping.
I mean, I think, and also I think everyone needs to keep in mind that as beautiful as karate can be, and it's spiritual, and as good as for your well-being, it's still punching and kicking each other.
It's a
at the end of the day.
I hate calling it a sport, but at the end of the day, it's about contact, and you do expect to be.
It's a martial art.
Hit.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So, something pretty good that I heard about recently is that over in the UK, the HDKI GB has arranged a women's competition.
Mm-hmm.
So a competition just for women and girls, right?
Yeah, it was. Well, the idea originally came from Simon Bly Sensei, and the whole idea was to really encourage more girls and women to participate in competitive karate, because while there's a lot of elite women that compete at the grassroots level, it's very difficult to get them along to competitions. And so this idea of just encouraging women or girls who might not have achieved any sporting success in anything else, or maybe karate is the first sort of physical activity that they've taken up seriously, it gives them a chance to kind of take their training into a whole different direction and to test themselves in that way, and challenge themselves in that way.
How long has the competition been running?
I believe last year was our 3rd year, so this will be our 4th year.
Right.
Yep.
Very good. And that is taking place on the 15th of June, I believe?
Correct, in Dudley.
And what about attendance? Has it been... I think I've heard it's growing. So last year, how many did you have?
I think the first year, I can't remember what the numbers were. I think possibly, although I could be corrected very quickly by Amy Jo and Amanda Gisby Senseis. I think it was in the region of about 60-something last year. The first year there was 12.
I see.
So it has grown.
That's
a
pretty good
growth.
growth.
That's a big spike, yeah.
Pretty good curve you're on there.
Excellent.
Exactly.
Cool. So it takes place on the 15th of June.
Yeah.
And if there's any women or girls out there interested in competing in the UK, it's taking place at in Dudley. And contact HDKI GB.
Yes, so
Correct.
I know that we're going to send a
And it's
a
an
team
open,
over.
anyone
Yeah.
can participate. You don't have to be HDKI.
I see.
So it's-
Open female comp. I think it's a great idea. We're definitely going to send a team over. I think we sent a team over last year.
yeah.
We're going to do the same again this year. So good luck to all our guys that are going to go to it. But also, if you're in town nearby or are looking for something to do that weekend, Scott says he's also teaching the following day, I believe, at Dudley Castle, which is a great venue. There's a zoo there for family members who don't want to train and just want to see. So there's stuff to do, and Scott says he's brilliant. So yeah, head along to that.
16th of June 2019, Scott Langley, Dudley Castle.
Make a weekend of it.
Excellent, cool.
Okay, well, thanks a lot for talking to us, Andrea Sensei.
We
You're
really
welcome.
appreciate it, and
Yeah.
I would say come back in soon. But we're going to see you in a couple of
A few
hours for
hours.
some more training. Yeah, never ending. There wasn't Scott Middleton. You say that Scott Middleton Sensei, the endless journey,
The endless journey.
The endless-
Kangeiko, the endless journey.
the endless fucking week is what I call it. Man. Just
Okay.
ridiculous. Thank you very much, guys. Oos.
Us.